This, my friends, is the brand new 2024 Triumph Tiger 900 Rally Pro, a bike with plenty of updates all across the bike to keep it fresh for the new model year. But look, is it enough to keep it as one of the best options in that middleweight adventure market, especially considering some of the other options from the competition are really very good? Well, in this video, we'll go through everything that you need to know about it, both good and bad, to find out. But before we get started, a massive thanks to REBELHORN for supporting the channel and sponsoring this video. In all of the riding footage in this particular video, I'm wearing their hiker adventure touring jacket. And not only do I think it looks great, but also it's absolutely packed full of features, and yet I think it's at a really decent price point. Now you can either go for this stealthy black version, they've got a couple of other more pop-in variants as well if a bit more vibrancy is your sort of thing. And look, it's armoured as you'd expect. You've got plenty of vents so you can keep yourself cool on those warmer days on the bike. Lots of little adjusting straps to make sure that you've got the fit right. And you've also got this waterproof membrane to wear inside in case it's a really wet day. And you can even wear this off the bike on its own, or they say you can even put it over the top of the jacket. Absolutely love how it looks, like I say, and I think it's all decent value for money. I've paired it today with their VANDAL jeans, which I've featured in some of my other videos, and these range adventure touring gloves. So look, check out the links down in the description below to find out more about the hiker jacket and also the rest of REBELHORN's range, which does expand beyond adventure bikes. A massive thanks again to REBELHORN for their support, and with that, let's get stuck into the bike. So let's start with the engine, and it's their 888cc inline triples, same as the previous iteration of this Tiger 900. And it has to be said, the T-plane crank in these Triumph triples that they also use in the Tiger 1200 is unique. You won't find another triple cylinder powered bike that sounds or feels anything like the ones that Triumph make with this particular crank configuration. The idea is to give it a little bit of the low down torquey sensation of a twin cylinder bike that you'll find almost everywhere in the middleweight adventure market. But with the 3 cylinders in this bike, you know, you've still got that playful top end, the sportiness, I guess, that you got with the old Tiger 800. And I think it does the trick, to be honest. It's a very versatile engine. It's happy chugging in the low revs. There's plenty of mid-range, and then it does rev up quite nicely, and it's a very fun bike to ride. New for 2024, they've given it 106.5 horsepower, so that's quite a lot up on the 94 horsepower of the previous iteration. And there's also 3 Newton meters more torque, so it now makes 90, I believe, as opposed to the 87 that you get in the Tiger 900 that came before this year. Now look, you will have to rev it a little bit harder to access this new peak power figure. So in the majority of riding in the mid-range, it's not going to feel vastly different. But thing is, if you're going to ride 2 up and you've got luggage as well and you want to perform those quick overtakes, or if you're just someone who really likes to wring a bike's neck, then over 10% more power up at the top is never going to be a bad thing. It also puts it pretty much on a par with the other middleweight adventure bikes on the market. It's much more comparable now with the likes of the KTM 890 Adventure, for example, the new BMW F900 GS. And they also say they've done that at the same time as improving fuel economy, which has to be said is fairly impressive. I will say though, one of the big downsides of the T-plane crank in these triples, with all that unique character and twinny soul, is that it does vibe quite a lot more than the old Tiger 800 with its even firing intervals, and even more than some of the twin cylinder bikes that it's going up against. And look, generally I'd say it's not that bad if you're sort of going up and down the rev range, but if you're sitting at a constant speed on the motorway, the vibes do start to creep in and it does get quite noticeable. And I'd say it might be off-putting for some riders, especially if you're particularly sensitive to that sort of stuff, if you're intending to buy one of these bikes as a bit of an adventure tourer. Now look, I can only assume that Triumph have had similar feedback from their customers because they've made 2 key changes on this particular 2024 bike to address this problem. The first one being the handlebars, which are now mounted on rubber bushes. And while that might sound like it had compromised on sort of rigidity of the bars and the way the bike handles, it's a little bit more nuanced than that. They're not all floppy and moving around, but just have those mounts in there to take take a little bit of the buzz out the bars. The other is the seat, which now has 10 mil more padding, and they've also made it flatter and roomier, they say, which allows the rider to move around a bit. So if you are getting a bit of discomfort when you're spending long stints in the saddle, at least you can shuffle about a bit more easily now and try and find a new, more comfortable spot. Now look, when the Tiger 900 first came out, I think it was around 2020, the first iteration of it, I remember publishing a sort of distance focused and touring focused review in which I mentioned I did find the vibes a little bit irritating, and I found the same as well on the launch of the Tiger 1200. But I'm pleased to report I do think that these two measures have really helped to minimize that sensation. And look, although there's no way around the fact that it's never going to be as smooth as the old Tiger 800, I think what they've done here is brought it down to a level where it is realistically comparable to the other bikes on the market, like the parallel twins. So yeah, for me that's a bit of a relief, and I think a big plus for this particular update. And the other thing to mention with regards to comfort and ergonomics is that with this particular Rally Pro model, they've moved the handlebars actually 15 mil closer to the rider, and they say that should make the bike more comfortable when seated and standing. Now for me, this one isn't particularly night and day, this change, but I will say riding this bike mainly seated, because I've been predominantly riding it on the road, I do find it very comfortable, a nice riding position, pretty upright in the back, and something that I'm pretty sure I could sustain all day. As for the chassis, well, no particularly huge updates for this year. You've still got the 21-inch front on this Rally Pro model, the 17 at the rear. They're tubeless, which is my preference, so definitely a good feature. Braking is really top spec. You've got Brembo Stylema 4-pot radially mounted calipers, so plenty of braking power. And suspension is courtesy of Showa with this upside down fork, monoshock at the rear, and plenty of travel as you'd expect with this more off-road bias model. The GT and GT Pro, for example, sit a little bit lower. I believe the frame is pretty much the same as well, so it doesn't handle particularly different to the previous gen, but I'd say that's a good thing. It's a really nice balance of on-road and off-road capability, and the only criticism I'd have is that the suspension does feel a little bit soft when it's middled out. For road riding, my preference is a little bit more compression damping on the fork just to stop it diving so much, especially under braking. But to be honest, that's more so a setup thing, and it's got full adjustability so you can get it down to your taste. And once I've made that tweak, I think it's acceptable for what you'd expect for a fairly tall adventure bike. Now onto the tech on this bike, and it's had some really nice updates in this department. I think a lot of the rider modes and rider aids are pretty much the same, and you've still got all the connectivity features and good stuff like that, but what you do get is this very nice 7-inch TFT display that you'll also find on the likes of the Tiger 1200s. It's a nice big dash, very easy to read. It's got this nice coating that's anti-glare as well, but I think more than that, it's the new graphics and layouts that it inherits from the Tiger 1200s as well, and also the speed triples that make it feel nicer to use, and also some of the basic information like the revs are much easier to read in this layout. I mean, it's not perfect, it can be a little bit slow to animate. It does feel like there's a little bit of wasted screen space around the outside as well, but largely I think it's an improvement for the good, and I think it's always good news for a middleweight bike like this to inherit some of the more premium features from the other bikes higher up in their lineup. Then you've got some nice little safety bits as well. The indicators now, much like a Honda for example, are always on, so they're extra position lights that make you a little bit more visible on the road. And they've also implemented an emergency brake light feature so that they flash at the rear under heavy braking. And look, that's not an uncommon accident for bikers to get hit from behind by another vehicle, and so anything to lessen the likelihood is a good thing in my book. Now also new for this year, we've got some little visual tweaks as well. They've sharpened up the bodywork. You can see there's a bit more detail around here. There's different lines to these side panels, and also some perhaps slightly more vibrant paint options like this grey and orange. Now to me, it seems like at the moment there's a bit of a movement towards a more rally inspired image in the adventure bike market. So I don't know if there's a little bit of their response to that, and perhaps also the fact that some of the other bikes on the market, like the 890 Adventure, the F900 GS, are just that bit more vibrant, whereas pretty much all of the colour options for the previous gen Tiger 900s were fairly subdued and muted. I think there is still a matte khaki version, which I believe was their bestseller previous to this. But I do think it is a good thing to have something a bit more exciting alongside that. And so hopefully that's going to help to keep both ends of the taste spectrum a little bit more happy. Generally, I'd say as well, there's some nice tweaks to some of the hardware. Things like the exhaust look a little bit more designed and have a nice quality to them. And the only thing I'm not a particularly big fan of is that 900 sticker on the side of the underseat tray there. But I guess if I owned one and it really bothered me, I could probably peel it off. And I'd say, across the rest of the bike, this visual update is broadly a success. Now, I think you've got to say that one of the really good things about these Pro models from Triumph, the Rally Pro or the GT Pro, which is similar but a little bit more road biased, is the fact that you get pretty much the absolute works in terms of the accessories catalogue. You've got peripheral lights, you've got engine bars, you've got a sump guard, you get the center stand, you've got a quick shifter as standard, you've got connectivity built in. There are handguards fitted, there are heated grips, there are heated seats for both the rider and passenger. And so if you are the sort of person who really likes to spec up their bike with the absolute works in terms of the bells and whistles, then generally I'd say the Rally Pro and the GT Pro tend to offer pretty good value for money. The only downside really is if you're somebody who doesn't really want all that stuff and isn't going to use any of it, and maybe you want the off-road biased rally model, but you don't want it with all the gadgets and gizmos and hardware and accessories that ultimately do push the starting price up beyond what it would be without them. You see, previously in the Tiger 900 lineup, when it was first announced, you had a base Tiger 900 model, a GT and a Rally, and then the GT Pro and Rally Pro, which was the top dog, much like this one is. Now in 2024, it's just a 3-bike lineup. You've got the GT and GT Pro, and then just the Rally Pro. And while I'm sure Triumph kind of know what they're doing, they mustn't have sold that many base Tiger 900s and base Rallies. You know, it does mean if you do want that stripped back off-road biased adventure bike, the starting price for a KTM 890, F900 GS, even a Norden 901 starts to look pretty tempting, and the 14.5 grand of this bike starts to open up some interesting looking other options, like maybe an Africa Twin or a Ducati Desert X, for example. Now, I'm sure if you spec any of those bikes up that I just mentioned with the level of accessories and equipment that you've got on this bike, it will come to at least as much, if not way more. But like I say, I think it's just worth me pointing that out, that you can't get that standard rally model anymore. And if you don't care about any of this extra stuff and you just want good basic mechanicals and a bike that you're probably going to throw around a bit off-road, then you could probably save yourself a couple of grand at least if you buy something elsewhere. As always though, I'd love to know what you think of it, so do let me know down in the comments below. Does it look like a good update to you? Or would you rather go for something a little bit more stripped back and simplistic? Also, if you want to see our other picks for the best new middleweights for 2024, then I'll put our guide on the screen now so you can give it a click and give it a watch if you haven't already. Hit subscribe as well if you want to see more of the latest motorcycle reviews like this right here on MOTOBOB. A massive thanks for watching today, and we'll see you in the next video.